Have you ever taken one of those online quizzes? The ones that ask a bunch of questions and then proudly declare you're either a logical, analytical left brain thinker or a creative, artistic right brain thinker. Yeah, me too. For years, I totally bought into this idea. It just seemed to make so much sense, right? We all know someone who's a math whiz and another who's a brilliant painter. It's a neat, tidy way to categorize ourselves and the people around us. But what if I told you this entire concept, this popular cultural belief that has spawned countless books, workshops, and personality tests, is actually one of the biggest myths in popular psychology? Today, we're going to dive deep into the fascinating story of the left brain, right brain myth, uncover where it came from, and reveal what neuroscience tells us about how our amazing brains work. Get ready to have your mind blown, because the truth is way more complex and interesting than the myth. The origin of this myth isn't just some random idea someone cooked up. It's actually rooted in some very real, very important scientific discoveries from the 1960s. The story starts with a neurobiologist named Roger W. Sperry. He was studying patients who had undergone a radical surgery to treat severe epilepsy. This procedure involved cutting the corpus callosum, a thick bundle of nerve fibers that connects the left and right hemispheres of the brain. The idea was to stop seizures from spreading from one side of the brain to the other. These patients, often called split-brain patients, provided a unique opportunity to study the functions of each hemisphere independently. Sperry and his colleague Michael Gazzaniga devised clever experiments. For example, they would show an image to a patient's left eye, only which sends information to the right hemisphere. If they showed a picture of a key, the patient couldn't verbally name what they saw, because the language centers are typically in the left hemisphere. But they could use their left hand, controlled by the right hemisphere, to pick out the key from a group of objects. When the image was shown to the right eye, sending information to the left hemisphere, the patient could easily say, "I see a key." These experiments were revolutionary. They demonstrated for the first time that the two hemispheres have specialized functions. The left hemisphere was clearly dominant for language and analytical thought. The right hemisphere excelled at spatial awareness, facial recognition, and processing visual information. Sperry even won a Nobel Prize for this groundbreaking work in 1981. It was a monumental step in understanding the brain. So, if the science is real, where did it all go wrong? Well, this is a classic case of scientific findings being oversimplified and misinterpreted by popular culture. The media and self-help gurus latched onto these findings and ran with them. They took the subtle, nuanced idea of hemispheric specialization and twisted it into a rigid, black and white dichotomy of left brain versus right brain person. Suddenly, you weren't just someone who was good at math. You were a left brain dominant person. You weren't just artistic. You were a right brain creative. This simplified version was easy to understand, easy to sell, and it made people feel like they had a special insight into their own personality. It created a powerful and enduring myth. But here's the crucial point that got lost in translation. In a healthy brain, the two hemispheres are not at war. They are in constant communication. That corpus callosum, the very thing that was severed in the split-brain patients, is like a superhighway of information, with millions of nerve fibers firing back and forth every single second. The two halves of your brain are constantly collaborating, sharing information, and working together as a unified, integrated system. They aren't rivals, they're partners. Let's think about a simple, everyday task, like having a conversation. You might think, oh, language, that's all left brain. But it's not that simple. Your left hemisphere is working hard to process the grammar, syntax, and the literal meaning of the words being said. But your right hemisphere is also crucial. It's interpreting the tone of voice, the emotional cues, the body language, and the overall context of the conversation. It helps you understand if someone is being sarcastic or genuine. Without both hemispheres working in perfect sync, you wouldn't be able to have a normal, fluid conversation. Or think about an artist painting a landscape. Yes, the right hemisphere is heavily involved in the spatial layout, the colors, and the overall visual composition. But the left hemisphere is also playing a key role, helping with the planning, the fine motor control of the brush strokes, and the logical sequencing of the painting process. Creativity isn't confined to one side of your skull. It's a whole brain process. True creativity, the kind that solves complex problems or produces great works of art, requires both the divergent, big-picture thinking associated with the right hemisphere and the convergent, detail-oriented thinking of the left. Modern neuroscience, with advanced tools like fMRI and PET scans, has completely debunked the idea of brain dominance. These imaging technologies allow scientists to see the brain in action. When you perform any task, whether it's solving a math problem, listening to music, or just daydreaming, scans show activity all over your brain. On both sides, there is simply no scientific evidence that people are left-brained or right-brained. It's just not how the brain works. A 2013 study from the University of Utah is a great example. Researchers analyzed the brain scans of over 1,000 people, from Ahasiaid to 29. They looked for evidence of dominant networks on either side of the brain. What did they find? Absolutely nothing. While certain functions do tend to be lateralized, or processed more on one side, individuals don't show a consistent, overall preference for using one hemisphere over the other. The lead researcher, Dr. Jared Nielsen, put it plainly. It is not the case that the left hemisphere is associated with logic or reasoning more than the right hemisphere. So why does this myth persist so strongly? For one, it's a compelling narrative. It gives us a simple framework for understanding ourselves and others. Labeling yourself as creative or logical can be a source of identity. It feels good to think we understand our own strengths and weaknesses in such a clear-cut way. But this oversimplification can also be limiting. If a child struggles with math and is told, "Oh, you're just a right-brained person," it can discourage them from even trying. It creates a fixed mindset where abilities are seen as innate and unchangeable. The truth is, our brains are incredibly plastic, meaning they can change and form new connections throughout our lives. You can become better at math, and you can learn to be more creative. Your potential is not predetermined by which side of your brain you think you use more. Embracing the reality of a whole brain approach is actually far more empowering. It means that logic and creativity are not mutually exclusive. The best engineers are often incredibly creative problem solvers. The most brilliant artists often have a deep, analytical understanding of their craft. Instead of putting ourselves into these restrictive boxes, we should be celebrating the amazing synergy between all parts of our brain. So, the next time you see a quiz or an article that asks if you're left-brained or right-brained, you can smile and know the truth. You are not one or the other. You are a whole-brain thinker. Your brain is a complex, interconnected, and dynamic network, far more powerful and fascinating than any simple myth could ever capture. The real science of the brain doesn't diminish its wonder. It enhances Italiano. It shows us that we are all capable of both logic and creativity, analysis and intuition. The key is to learn how to harness the full, integrated power of our incredible minds. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey to debunk a major brain myth. If you found this interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into science and psychology. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Did you used to believe in the left brain or right brain myth? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.